The soul awakened once again, the son of a changed destiny. At first, he thought he was the light that illuminated the world, the sun that warmed it. Later, he discovered that the light of people in this world was already enough to warm themselves. So he decided to take the people of this world, pick up the soul gun, and kill that hypocritical god. It sounds so good, but this is actually a story of an external cheater who saves another local server from allowing cheats, but is controlled by a fake server administrator. Keywords of the novel. The son of the Peerless Tang Clan without a pop-up window, the complete collection download of the Peerless Tang Clan Sun TXT, and the latest chapter reading of the Peerless Tang Clan Sunday Chapter 1. Wedge. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Wedge. Upon entering the eye, it is a soft halo. The halo hangs over the clouds, scattering and reflecting, some crossing the mist and shining on a magnificent and shining city beneath the clouds, while others wander in the clouds. The gentle breeze blows through, shattering the clouds and revealing endless starlight enveloping the Milky Way in the starry sky, bright and soft. A blue figure stands in the most magnificent palace in the city, resembling the Pantheon of ancient Rome. There is a large circular hole with a diameter of 8.9 m on the dome, and starlight passes through the hole, forming a straight beam of light. The figure stood in the beam of light, with its water blue hair paired with an elegant blue robe, revealing a divine radiance. He looked through the circular hole at an extremely bright new star in the Milky Way. With a light sigh, the sadness between his eyebrows deepened. Perhaps feeling the man's sorrow, a beautiful woman in a pink long dress with long scorpion braids walked forward and hugged the man, gently brushing away the sorrow with her weak and boneless hands on his young face. I've become a mother and still act coquettishly, the man smiled at the woman. The woman in a pink dress hugged the man and pouted with some dissatisfaction, isn't he looking at you with some sadness? Besides, you become a law enforcement officer in the divine realm. After the sea god, you are still called Tang San. You are still my third brother. Xiaowu. Tang San was about to speak when a strong light burst out from the star cluster in front of him. The strong light passed through the circular hole and directly shone on Tang San and Xiaowu. Hot air rushed towards Tang San with the light. Tang San quickly pushed away Xiaowu, lightly jumped, and passed through the circular hole, standing on the dome of the palace, under the strong light, exploring the dazzling new star. However, the strong light was too dazzling, even the gods could not see through the light. Fortunately, the strong light comes and goes quickly. After the light disappears, the star cluster also returns to its original state, but it seems to have become brighter or more vibrant. Tang San's face did not improve with the passing of the sunlight, but instead became increasingly dark. San Gu, what's wrong? Xiao Wu followed closely behind and also walked through the round hole, standing next to Tang San. The new star I selected has disappeared, Tang San frowned and said. Is there any problem? Xiao Wu was puzzled. It took me a lot of effort to figure out his fate, and he has developed an intricate relationship with our Tang men. But now, the new star has disappeared directly. Tang San frowned and looked towards the lower realm. He had a worried expression on his face. Although under his instigation, the fate of the new star had been fixed and there shouldn't be any accidents, he was not afraid of 10,000, just in case. If anything happens, the Tang sect may disappear into the long river of history after it has declined. But what he is more worried about is that such changes will affect his arrangements for Shaoqi. At this time, the Dolua continent was not as clear as it had been a few times before, as if it had been shrouded in a layer of fog by someone. Tang San thought of this and immediately activated his purple extreme magic eyes, looking towards the mist. Ah! Tang San suddenly shouted, and 2 drops of golden blood flowed from the corner of his eyes. Xiao Wu immediately stepped forward and helped Tang San, asking with concern, San Gu, you're okay? I'm fine, Tang San said as he patted Xiao Wu's hand, indicating that he was not in any big trouble. Turning to look at Dolua continent with frightened eyes, it was not a mist, but a layer of dazzling sunlight. "Where's Xiaoqi?" Tang San wiped the blood from the corner of his eyes and asked. With a worried expression on her face, Xiao Wu replied, "She's sleeping in the room." "Well, I understand." Tang San nodded and looked at Xiaoqi's room. Just now, he didn't see everything clearly. Under his perception, God could no longer interfere with that world. This time, it was truly impossible to interfere. At the junction of Dolua continent and Sun Moon continent, in the bustling forest, branches are everywhere, and except for a few paths frequently traversed and trampled by forest animals, it is difficult to move forward in the remaining areas. A woman covered in bloodstains was carrying a swaddle and constantly walking through the forest. Her soul power had been depleted by half, and the branches of the trees kept scratching the surface of her body. The exposed, intact and undamaged skin has been cut by the sharp branches of trees moving at high speed, and some have even scratched previous wounds. Blood splashed out and landed on the green leaves. There was no expression of pain on the woman's face, and she had no time for pain, just like she couldn't protect herself with the remaining half of her soul power. She turned her head and didn't notice anyone chasing her, but she didn't dare to stop or even slow down. Bang! A sudden explosion came from behind the woman, and her face froze. She glanced at the baby in swaddling clothes and whispered, "I'm sorry, baby." The soul power of a woman's physical strength begins to operate in a special way. If the man behind him who uses self-destructions to block the enemy's path is present, he must know that the woman is starting to burn her life. The child in swaddling clothes suddenly let out a cry, and then suddenly stopped. The woman saw this and quickly opened the swaddling clothes, looked at the child, found the child, and when she saw her, she grinned and immediately let go. "I'm still alive." End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Start. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Start. Dolua continent, Xinglua Empire. In the White Tiger Duke's mansion located 20 miles west of Xinglua City, willow catkins sway freely in the air with the gentle breeze, and in the magnificent palace-like architectural complex, a low and dilapidated wooden house is out of place with the surrounding environment. The decoration of the firewood room is very simple, with only a dilapidated wooden bed and a wardrobe without a cabinet door. The only few women's style clothes in the wardrobe are covered in a layer of dust. Two teenagers sat on the wooden bed. A young man with dark blue hair tips and a thin face, looking about 11 or 12 years old, dressed in a washed white gray cloth shirt. At this moment, his eyes were tightly closed, and a wisp of white air occasionally exhaled from his mouth and nose with the ups and downs of the youth. Sitting next to him was a young man of the same age and dressed similarly to him. The difference was that this young man had a faint golden sun mark on his eyebrows. He did not practice, but quietly looked out the window at the prosperity. Puff. The momentum on the young cultivator suddenly rose. "Jiegu, I succeeded." Hui Yuhao opened his eyes with a happy expression on his face. "Okay," Su Jia regained his senses. "Rain Hao, let's first restore his soul power." Hui Yuhao nodded, closed his eyes, and began to comb through the uncontrollable soul power in his body due to the breakthrough. As time passed, the chaotic aura on Hui Yuhao's body slowly dissipated as his soul power subsided. "Let's go." Seeing Hui Yuhao open his eyes again, Su Jia picked up two packages, one handed to Hui Yuhao and the other carried on his own. Squeak. Hui Yuhao stood up and let out a cry of surprise from the long-neglected wooden bed beneath him. He jumped under the bed, put on his cloth shoes, carried the package handed to him by Su Jia on his back, and the two of them walked out of the firewood room together. As soon as he left the firewood shed, white fluorescence appeared in Hui Yuhao's eyes. He walked up to Su Jia and walked through the magnificent architectural complex with him. Even though they had walked countless times on the road to leave the Duke's mansion, they remained extremely cautious, carefully avoiding the servants in the mansion, and no one noticed them walking through it. Not long after, the back door on the north side of the Duke's mansion quietly opened, and two figures rushed out from the door. They gently closed the door, making sure no one was following them, and ran north without looking back. Although the Duke's mansion is located outside Xinglua City, it is also well connected. The two of them did not immediately walk onto the official road, but walked through the woods next to the road for more than 10 minutes before finally reaching the official road. As soon as he stepped onto the official road, Su Jie opened the package behind him, took out a small white porcelain bottle with a slit, and said, "Yu Hao, come and apply the medicine." The two of them were walking through the forest, and even with a white tiger dagger opening their way, it was still difficult to avoid small blood wounds being cut by branches on their bodies. Poor quality white powder was sprinkled on Hui Yuhao's wound, and the pain came from the small bloodstream. However, Hui Yuhao's face was calm and he made a little sound. Su Jie was surprised and looked up at Hui Yuhao, only to find that his eyes were red and he was staring closely at the White Tiger Duke's mansion in the south, which was about to disappear from their sight. He raised his hand and patted Hui Yuhao's shoulder. Hui Yuhao reacted and wiped his eyes. He took the white porcelain bottle, poured out the powder, and applied it to Su Jie's wound. Su Jie turned his head to look at the Duke's mansion, which was about to disappear. Unlike Hui Yuhao, his black pupils were very calm. Hui Yuhao's mother, Hui Yuner, was the Duke's personal maid herself. She grew up with the Duke and was originally meant to serve his master and son. Therefore, 12 years ago on the night, Hui Yuhao was naturally born. Not long after Hui Yuhao was born, an elderly woman, holding a baby, found Hui Yuner. Even though her appearance had undergone significant changes due to aging, Hui Yuner still recognized the friend she had known during the establishment of diplomatic relations between the Sun-Moon Empire and the Star Luo Empire, and took the baby from her trembling friend's hand. At the moment when Hui Yuner received the baby, Hui Yuner's friend, whose life was like a candle, said the word Su Jie. Due to the burning of life, his entire body turned into a light spot and dissipated. Su Jie's mother remained cautious even in the end. Before arriving at Xinglua City, she had already shaken off the people who were chasing her and led them in the wrong direction. Moreover, due to the burning of life, Su Jie's mother's breath of life was already weak. Under her deliberate concealment, she passed through the Duke's mansion and all the way to Hui Yuner's small courtyard, without being noticed. After all, if discovered, she wouldn't be able to go to Hui Yuner's courtyard either. Fortunately, although Hui Yuner still had no status at that time, she had a small right to have a child for the Duke. Finding a close bookboy for Hui Yuhao was not a problem. So, under the guise of adopting a scholar for Hui Yuhao, Hui Yuner hid Su Jie and took him to the Pandemic Relocation Center, orphanage, in Xinglua City for a circle before returning to his own small courtyard. To Hui Yuner's surprise, Su Jie was very obedient throughout the journey, without making any noise or causing any commotion. Although Hui Yuner said to the public that he wanted Su Jie to be Hui Yuhao's bookboy, Hui Yuner treated Su Jie like he treated Hui Yuhao. At the age of 2, Su Jie's body was not fully developed, and memories of his past life were sometimes absent, resulting in his whole being sometimes dull and sometimes extremely detached. It was also at this time that the Duke of White Tiger began to go out to fight, and all the affairs in the mansion were entrusted to the Duchess. The Duchess, for the sake of her 2 children, began to suppress all possible factors that could affect his children in the mansion. On the day Duke Baihu left, Hui Yuner, who was carrying 2 children, was forced to move to the firewood shed in the servant area. And all sources of income were cut off. Fortunately Su Jie's mother left a lot of wealth. Although the 3 of them were poor, they could still live well. After 2 years, their lives were still good. Su Jie and Hui Yuhao occasionally helped Hui Yuner with some work to earn some extra income. The bad news lies in Su Jie's memory of not being able to function properly at this time. One day, when the Duke returned from a battle, Su Jie prepared to report to the Duke of White Tiger based on his memory in his mind. But a 4-year-old child still has only a small portion of memories. How could it be a match for the Duchess? The complaint was unsuccessful, so he was caught and brought back. That night, if Hui Yuner had not protected him with his body, he would have been killed. It was also that night that Su Jie's memories were all restored. He finally understood that he had traveled through another world, the Dolua continent, or the timeline of the second part. The first world he traveled through was the world of Heaven Sword and Dragon Saber. Su Jie had nothing to do that night, but Hui Yuner was already in poor health and was beaten up again. That night, he fell seriously ill. Fortunately, Su Jie learned the Nine Yang Manual in his last life. Once his internal power was exercised, he found that his physical strength had a lot of internal power. On second thought, it was Doluo. What he had in his body should be the innate soul power. Thinking of this, I quickly ran the soul power, and started to run according to the first layer of the Nine Yang Manual. After transforming the innate soul power into Jiuyang soul power, I immediately transferred the soul power to Hui Yuner's body to heal his wounds. But it may be because of the martial spirit. Just as Tang San's mysterious sky skill cannot break through the first level, Su Jie's the Nine Yang Manual also falls into the same situation. The Nine Yang Manual is magical, but these wonders will be revealed one by one with the deepening of the cultivation of the Nine Yang Manual. The Nine Yang Manual, which has only one level of accomplishments, has the ability to heal wounds, but this ability is too weak. So even though Su Jie continued to heal Hui Yuner's injuries, Hui Yuner still left behind the root cause of the illness. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Hua Hang has not opened Hang. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Hua Hang has not opened Hang. After taking the medicine, the two of them, who had no attachment to the Duke of White Tiger's mansion, rushed along the official road without stopping. Half an hour later, Su Jie and Hui Yuhao, who were out of the influence range of the Duke's mansion, finally stopped and sat in place to rest. Is everything okay, Yuhao? Su Jie looked at Hui Yuhao's eyes, which were still slightly red, and lightly patted Hui Yuhao's shoulder. Hui Yuner has passed away, which is a predetermined fact and something that Su Jie and Hui Yuhao cannot change, at least for the time being. And for the sadness of Hui Yuner's passing, Su Jie has always been more worried that some god in the sky who cannot interfere with the lower world may bring Hui Yuner's soul into the divine world at the moment of Hui Yuner's death. It's okay. Hui Yuhao shook his head and said he was okay. Su Jie didn't say much when he didn't feel like speaking. The two of them rested for a while again and got up to head northwest. They are preparing to go to Shrek College, which they need a shelter from their weekdays. Other colleges can also go there, but for one thing, the two of them who have hardly left the Duke's mansion have no idea what other colleges are on the continent. Secondly, in 10,000 years, Shrek College is undoubtedly the best on this continent today. Two thin figures stretched out under the pull of the sunlight, their steps weak but firm. Before going to Shrek Academy, they are preparing to go to the Star Forest to hunt soul beasts and create a soul ring. In fact, there is also a considerable forest of soul beasts around Xinglua City, but the forest around Xinglua City is not a good place for them. Firstly, there are not as many types of soul beasts in the forests around Xinglua as in the Star Do Forest. Su Jie's soul beasts with martial soul attributes are easy to find, but Hui Yuhao's soul beasts with martial soul attributes are difficult to find. Therefore, compared to the forests around Xinglua City, Hui Yuhao is more willing to go to Star Do to try his luck. Secondly, the forest was under the control of the Xinglua royal family and the Duke's mansion, and both entry and exit required money. Su Jie could not have taken Hui Yuhao with him to hunt souls there despite being discovered, let alone they didn't have much money to pay entry taxes. More importantly, Su Jie was aware that the Star Forest had an important opportunity for Hui Yuhao. For Su Jie's own soul ring, he wants to first see the strength of the soul beasts in this world. If the strength is not high, his martial arts skills also have the opportunity to hunt one on his own. If there is really no other way, he can only think of another way. For 11 years, due to the relationship with the Duchess, the two of them had very little understanding of the basic knowledge on the mainland. Under the control of the Duchess, it was impossible for them to hire a general education teacher for Su Jie and Hui Yuhao. Even recognizing characters was taught by Hui Yuner. Hui Yuner, who lacks soul power, does not have as much understanding of soul masters as Su Jiehua. Hui Yuhao mostly learned about soul masters and martial soul knowledge from Su Jie. Fortunately, due to the novel setting of the Dolua Continent series, Su Jie still remembers the setting of martial souls and soul masters quite clearly. Martial soul is an ability that every person on this continent possesses. At the age of 6, one can awaken a martial soul, which can be anything, equipment, animal, soul beast, etc. The awakened animal or soul beast's inner martial soul is generally referred to as a beast soul master, while others are generally referred to as a tool soul master. There are also some special mutated soul masters. Although everyone has martial souls, not everyone has soul power. Only a small portion of people possess soul power, and only these individuals can become the most noble soul masters on the continent. Soul masters from low to high are Soul Master, Great Soul Master, Soul Zun, Soul Sect, Soul King, Soul Emperor, Soul Saint, Soul Dolua, and Title Dolua. The higher the level of Soul Master, the stronger it is, which is inevitable. Each level is further divided into 10 levels. Currently, Hui Yuhao and Su Jie are both at level 10, at the peak of Soul Warriors. To level up, they need to absorb soul rings. Hui Yuhao's martial soul is a spiritual eye, while Su Jie's martial soul is a sun, yes, a sun. When the martial soul awakened, the Duchess showed a clear killing intent toward Su Jie. However, seeing that Hui Yuhao's martial soul did not inherit the Duke's powerful martial soul, her killing intent decreased significantly. When testing their soul power, Su Jie and Hui Yuhao, 1.5 levels, 1 and a level. After seeing these 2 levels, the Duchess's killing intent disappeared immediately, and a slight smile appeared on her face. That's right, 1.5, 2 useless things, it's almost impossible to pose a threat to her son. Since then, the Duchess's attention to the 2 has decreased significantly, which is also part of the reason why Su Jie and Hui Yuhao ran out of the Duke's mansion without anyone stopping them. But Hui Yuhao is a real level 1, but Su Jie is not a real half-level 1. He estimated that his innate soul power was at least level 7. As for why he tested it at level half, because he used the soul power he had cultivated the day before to heal Hui Yuner. If the 9-Yang manual had not been magical enough to operate on its own and produce a trace of soul power, his test result that day would have been a waste without soul power. For this trip, Hui Yuhao's heart was clearly filled with worry and fear, but the constantly filling power in his body gradually let go of his suspended heart. The cultivation method given by Jie Gu is indeed magical. He only completed the first layer of cultivation, and his strength had already filled his whole body. The 2 of them rushed all the way without stopping. After 2 hours, Su Jie sat down with Hui Yuhao to rest. He looked up at Hui Yuhao, who was sweating profusely on one side of his forehead. Dragon and Elephant Prajna skill is no less powerful than the 9-Yang manual. Along the way, he could feel that Hui Yuhao had not mobilized his soul power, but had been on his way with pure physical power. In different worlds, the original martial arts secrets seem to have slightly different effects. The effects produced by practicing the first layer of the original Dragon Elephant Prajnaparamita technique are not as good as those shown in Hui Yuhao. Of course, this may also be because the compatibility between Dragon Elephant Prajnaparamita and Hui Yuhao is very good. When Hui Yuhao first practiced Dragon Elephant Prajnaparamita, Su Jie felt that the soul power generated by this martial art was extremely matched with Hui Yuhao's. Now it seems that this skill is really right. At the beginning, Su Jie wanted to teach Hui Yuhao the 9-Yang manual, but at that time he ignored that some skills need qualifications. Although the final practice of the 9-Yang manual can improve the ability to wash essence and cut marrow, there is a threshold for learning the 9-Yang manual. In his last life, Su Jiezai reluctantly learned the Nine Yang manual because of the pure Yang Wuji skill, created by Zhang Sanfeng in combination with the Nine Yang manual. It's not like Zhang Wuji, the son of destiny, who used 5 years to refine the Nine Yang manual to a great extent without ever practicing any martial arts. There is indeed Zhang Wuji's exposure to various martial arts from childhood to adulthood, as well as the reason why Zhang Sanfeng continuously delivers internal energy into his body after being poisoned by cold. But even with these reasons, being able to spend 5 years practicing a divine skill indirectly indicates that Zhang Wuji's talent is indeed excellent. Not to mention later, he only spent a few hours practicing the terrifying speed of the Qianquan great move to the top level. Now Hui Yuhao, the son of destiny in another world, can't practice the Nine Yang manual with his own aptitude without opening the door. This is also the reason why Su Jie taught him the Dragon Elephant Prajnaparamita technique. After all, this thing progresses step by step. Even a foolish person, as long as someone teaches him, can become the first level in 1 or 2 years. The more difficult it becomes, the more time it takes to practice it, and the more time it takes to double. If we calculate based on the speed that Hui Yuhao spent 2 years on the first layer, it will be 1,200 years after Hui Yuhao cultivates to the title of Doluo. This time is very long, but Su Jie is not worried. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Rivers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Rivers. The two of them rushed all the way without saying anything. Although the power within his body made Hui Yuhao feel at ease, it was impossible to say that his heart was not at all flustered. After all, spirit-based soul beasts are as rare as spirit-based martial souls. He is not sure if he has a chance to obtain a soul ring, but the decision to leave the Duke was made by him and Su Jie together. If the two of them stayed at the Duke's mansion, even though their talents were very poor, the Duchess would never allow them to obtain soul rings. They went north all the way, walked a distance, and finally left the range of Xinglua City. Although Su Jie is as young as Hui Yuhao, only 2 months older than him, his actual age is much older than Hui Yuhao, so everything that needs to be prepared is ready. Xinglua City is located in the central part of the Xinglua Empire, while Su Jie and Hui Yuhao's destination is in the northern part of the Xinglua Empire, in the starry forest that connects with the Heavenly Soul Empire. Hui Yuhao only knew that there were many types of soul beasts in that forest, including powerful ones. Only Su Jie knew that a silkworm under that forest was an important silkworm for Hui Yuhao's rise. As for Su Jie, what did a sun martial soul want with that thing, and he didn't like anything strange to appear in his mind. The two of them take care of each other. When they are tired, they sit down and rest. When they are hungry, they eat the dry food they bring. After finishing the food, they rely on Hui Yuhao's amazing vision to find a wild rabbit and a wild chicken to feast on. When they are thirsty, they find a river. One's soul power is constantly growing, and it doesn't take much to travel. The other's stamina is amazing, and the speed of travel is very fast. They walk more than 300 miles in a day. The two of them only had 1 golden soul coin, 17 silver soul coins, and 6 copper soul coins, which were neither too many nor too few, but they spent extremely frugally, mainly because they had no source of income. Although Su Jie had memories from his previous life and had a map, he still made 2 mistakes. Fortunately, after walking for a while, he realized he had gone in the wrong direction and promptly turned around, returning to the right path. 5 days later, Jie Gu, it's almost here. Hui Yuhao looked at the map and asked. Su Jie nodded, picked up the water bottle, took a quick sip, took the map from Hui Yuhao's hand, and handed the water bottle to him. Let me see, how long will it take? Su Jie stared at the map and said. Hui Yuhao, who was next to him, took the water bottle and drank it happily. Almost, there's still half an hour left. Su Jie finished speaking and put away the map. Let's hurry, then. Hui Yuhao also put away the kettle. Okay, Su Jie nodded, and their speed increased. Wow, wow. The two of them had just walked for a while when suddenly the sound of gurgling water came into Hui Yuhao's ears. Hui Yuhao was pleasantly surprised and said, "Brother Jia, there is a river." Upon hearing this, Su Jia was also pleased and said, "Let's go and rest by the river first. Then, let's see if there are any fish in the river. If not, we'll catch 2 soft-bone rabbits." Upon hearing these words, Hui Yuhao immediately jumped up with joy. Okay, stop jumping," Su Jia said helplessly, patting Hui Yuhao's shoulder. "The two of them haven't washed up for several days, and their bodies are already a bit sticky." Hee hee. Hui Yuhao smiled and carefully felt the direction of the water flow. Su Jia didn't bother him when he saw the situation, and waited quietly beside him. Hui Yuhao's talent was poor, after all, he was a spiritual martial soul, and his 5 senses were much stronger than ordinary people. Soon Hui Yuhao opened his eyes, pointed in a direction, and said, "Over there. Let's go." Su Jia replied. The speed under their feet was much faster than just now, and soon they had already walked out of a distance of 200 meters and saw the target they were looking for. A small stream about 3 meters wide, with a clear bottom. Through the stream water, you can see several green fish swimming at the bottom of the stream. "You go first," Su Jia said before Hui Yuhao could speak when he arrived at the stream. Upon hearing this, Hui Yuhao cheered and quickly took off his clothes, jumping into the stream and carefully cleaning it. Su Jia glanced at Hui Yuhao splashing in the water, with a faint smile on his face. Hui Yuhao washed himself up and climbed onto the shore, waiting for his body to air dry. Su Jia quickly took off his clothes and jumped into the water to carefully clean it. Hui Yuhao chopped off a branch of the tree and used a dagger to remove any excess branches, while he was making a harpoon. Since the last time they took a shower together, the clothes on the shore were almost stolen by someone because there was no one to take care of them. After almost completing the feat of daydreaming, both of them went into the water alone, while the other was watching the clothes on the shore. Su Jia's speed was very fast. When Su Jia was washed and landed, Hui Yuhao approached him naked. Su Jia raised his hand to summon a martial soul, and the sun shone warmly on the two of them in an instant. The water stains on their bodies quickly disappeared, and they put on their clothes. The two of them were preparing to rest in place when Su Jia caught 2 soft-bone rabbits flooding the forest nearby and picked up some firewood. Hui Yuhao picked up the harpoon, rolled up his pants, and ran to the shore to pick up the fish. Su Jia quickly picked up the firewood, put it down, and picked up a place far away from Hui Yuhao with the rabbit and their dirty clothes. Su Jia used a dagger to deal with the 2 dead rabbits, then washed his clothes. When he was just picking up firewood, Su Jia had already checked and there were not many people around. After washing the dirty clothes, Hui Yuhao, who was catching fish on the other side, had already caught more than 10 fish. Su Jia casually hung his clothes under several branches and sat under the tree, summoning his martial soul and placing it on his head. He picked up Hui Yuhao's dagger and began to deal with the fish. After Hui Yuhao caught a few more, he went ashore. Su Jia also took care of the fish Hui Yuhao had caught before, retrieved his martial soul, washed his hands by the creek, tried hanging clothes, and found that they were dry. He folded the clothes and put them away. Hui Yuhao over there had already set up the firewood and seemed to be waiting for Su Jia to pass by. Su Jia walked forward and reached out to summon the martial soul. This time, the sun of the martial soul was no longer as warm as before, but became scorching hot. Upon seeing this, Hui Yuhao immediately picked up a branch and approached Su Jia's martial soul. As soon as the branch touched Su Jia's martial soul, the end of the branch near Su Jia's martial soul immediately ignited. Hui Yuhao quickly threw the branch into the pile of firewood that had just been set up. After the firewood ignited, Hui Yuhao smeared the freshly prepared green fish and rabbits with salt and inserted them next to the firewood pile to start harvesting. Su Jia went to deal with the unfinished green fish before. After a while, a special fragrance began to diffuse, with a strong aroma. The green fish also swayed with the flames, gradually turning golden yellow, combined with that special fragrance, appearing particularly tempting. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Eating grilled fish. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 5. Eating grilled fish. Huiyuhao saw that the green fish had been grilled and just picked it up. How fragrant! At this moment, a coquettish shout suddenly sounded, with a clear and crisp sound. Huiyuhao quickly threw the grilled fish into his hand and instantly summoned his martial soul. Upon hearing the sound, Su Jie also reacted and threw the dagger in his hand to Huiyuhao, summoning his martial soul and following the direction of the sound, he assumed a combat posture. Huiyuhao took the dagger and posed for battle in the direction of the sound. This dagger was given to Huiyuhao's mother by the Duke of White Tiger. It is extremely sharp and sturdy, called the White Tiger dagger. Huiyuhao's martial soul has little combat power, and holding the White Tiger dagger gives him some self-protection power. The two of them looked in the direction of the sound and saw two people walking along the stream. A man and a woman. The woman looked about 15 or 16 years old, with black hair and a ponytail, dressed in a light blue outfit, reflecting her better face and more youthful and beautiful. The man is of the same age as the woman, with a slender and straight figure that is one head taller than Su Jie and Huiyuhao. He has short blue hair and a handsome face that gives a sense of elegance. Ah, don't misunderstand, we're just buying some grilled fish from you. The girl looked at the grilled fish on the ground, feeling a bit regretful, and then looked at the two of them who were showing an attacking posture and said, "We have no ill intentions." The 15-year-old boy also waved his hand, his voice elegant and gentle. Upon seeing this, Su Jie roughly guessed that the two people in front of him were Tangye and Bei Bei from the original work, so he put away his martial soul and nodded at Huiyuhao. Upon seeing this, Huiyuhao also put away his martial soul, put down the dagger in his hand, picked up the grilled fish that had just been thrown away, and said to the two, "Just buy it, I can treat you to eat." Upon seeing the situation, Su Jie remained silent and watched the two of them quietly. During their journey these past few days, the people they had met were both good and bad. They had been tricked and had received favors from others, so Huiyuhao would also help others appropriately along the way. The girl didn't refuse and said, "Little brother, then I won't be polite." Upon hearing this, Huiyuhao picked up two grilled fish and handed one to Su Jie. Su Jie didn't pay much attention and blew the dust off the grilled fish before eating it in large gulps. Huiyuhao put another fish away, picked up two unripe green fish, and started grilling them. "You guys, it's not dirty." The girl was taken aback, and as soon as she spoke, she was pulled by the boy. The girl turned her head to express confusion, and the boy pointed to the clothes on both of them. The girl suddenly understood. The clothes of the two are not good, with severe cleaning marks, and at first glance, they are not children from wealthy families. Children from families dressed in this way will not waste any food. Huiyuhao lowered his head and focused on grilling the fish, not paying attention to the small movements of the young boys and girls. Su Jie noticed the small movements of the two of them when Huiyuhao was holding a dagger, and he didn't care either. He had been a human for 3 generations, so he wouldn't care about it. After eating the grilled fish, he lowered his head and picked up the green fish he had just caught. The young man looked at the two of them who were focused, perhaps feeling that it was not good for him to do nothing and eat free food. He walked straight to Su Jie's side, squatted down, and asked with some embarrassment, "Do you need any help?" "Okay." Su Jie didn't refuse and handed the green fish and dagger that he had just broken open to the boy, sitting on the side waiting for him to handle them. The young man was taken aback by the situation. He had never dealt with these things before. "Can you at least teach me how to handle them first?" He looked up at Su Jie, hoping that he could at least offer some guidance, but found that Su Jie was looking up at something without any indication of needing any guidance. He turned his head to look at the girl, hoping to get her help. However, the girl was staring intently at Hui Yuhao's grilled fish, completely unaware of the situation around her. After the young man had mishandled a fish, he saw Su Jie walking up again. "Let me do it." A childish voice rang out, and Su Jie took the dagger from the boy's hand, then placed the fish that the boy had handled aside. The young man looked at Su Jie and placed the fish he had dealt with aside, feeling a little puzzled. "Why do we have to put it aside alone?" Su Jiedo didn't lift his head either and said, "I didn't handle it well. I'll give you something to eat later." The boy's face turned red upon hearing the words and did not speak again. After Su Jie finished handling all the remaining fish, Hui Yuhao over there also grilled the 2 fish. The young girl quickly approached upon seeing the girl approaching, and Hui Yuhao's face suddenly turned red. There were beautiful maids in the duke's mansion, but none of them could compare with the young girl. The main reason was the sudden approach of the young girl, which made Hui Yuhao unable to react in time. "Here." Hui Yuhao whispered. The girl chuckled and said, "Little brother, you're still shy." She took the grilled fish from Hui Yuhao's hand and ate it carefully. At this moment, Su Jie and the young man walked over with the freshly processed green fish and said to the girl, "Xiaoya, this little brother hasn't eaten yet. You should have eaten it first." "What do you call me?" Xiaoya's eyes widened slightly, and she looked at the young man as if warning. She lowered her head and took another bite of the grilled fish, looking very playful. The young man still held a green fish in his hand, making it difficult to reach out, and said helplessly, "Teacher Xiaoya, come on." When the young man put down the green fish, Hui Yuhao handed the other grilled fish to the young man and said, "Big brother, you can eat it too." "Little brother, you haven't eaten yet. You should eat first." The boy smiled slightly and didn't immediately take the grilled fish. Hui Yuhao shook his head and said, "I do." After finishing, he picked up the grilled fish that had just fallen on the ground and started eating it. Su Jie walked to the fire and took over Hui Yuhao's job of grilling fish. He picked up 2 grilled fish and started grilling them. The young man looked at Hui Yuhao, who was eating grilled fish, and was a bit stunned. He said, "My name is Beibei, and his name is Tanya." "Little brother, what's your name?" "My name is Hui Yuhao." Hui Yuhao quickly finished the grilled fish, walked over to Su Jie, took out 2 fish, and started grilling again. Beibei turned his head to look at Su Jie, and before he could speak, Su Jie said, "Su Jie." After Su Jie finished speaking, he handed the unfinished grass carp to Hui Yuhao. Hui Yuhao took the grass carp and was puzzled, saying, "Brother Jie, this fish hasn't been cleaned properly. It will be very fishy after baking." He took a dagger from Su Jie and began to do the second treatment. Su Jie didn't speak, but Beibei next to him blushed once again. With Su Jie's help, Hui Yuhao's grilled fish speed noticeably increased. In no time, the 4 of them finished all the grilled fish and 2 rabbits. "It's really great. I've never had such delicious grilled fish and rabbits before. How about you 2 become chefs for me?" Tanya lay directly on the grass, touching her stomach, and said. Hui Yuhao and Su Jie were tidying up the campsite when Beibei heard this and said with a smile, "Do you have money, teacher Xiaoya?" Upon hearing this, Tanya felt a bit embarrassed and gave a big laugh, saying, There will be some in the future." After finishing speaking, she stood up and glared at Beibei. At this moment, Su Jie and Hui Yuhao also finished tidying up the campsite. Hui Yuhao stood up and said to Tanya and his companions, "Brother Bei, Sister Tang, let's go first." End of this chapter. Chapter 6. First Soul Ring, Wind Baboon. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. First Soul Ring, Wind Baboon. 2 little brothers. This place is in the wilderness and very close to the star forest where soul beasts roam. Are you going to hunt for soul rings? Do you need our help? Beibei spoke out. Su Jie also stood up at this moment and said, "No need." After saying goodbye with Hui Yuhao, he turned around and left under Tanya's surprised gaze. Bei, when I just saw them putting on an attack posture, it seemed that only Su Jie summoned the martial soul, but there was no soul ring on the martial soul. They wouldn't just go hunting the soul ring like this, would they? Tanya said in surprise. It should be, 2 soul warriors who don't have soul rings are going to hunt them, which may be dangerous. Why don't we follow behind and take a look? Bei thought for a moment and said. Okay, let them join Tangmen together then. Tanya said happily. Bei joked, I think you wanted to bring Hui Yuhao's brother into the Tangmen because his grilled fish is delicious. Tanya chuckled, regardless of whether they join or not, we must protect them after eating their grilled fish. At this moment, Su Jie and Hui Yuhao were walking rapidly, unaware that Bei and Tanya behind them were talking about bringing them into the Tangmen. Even if he knew, Su Jie would not let Hui Yuhao join the Tang clan. After all, if he had a relationship with a certain god, there would definitely be no good outcome. In the original work, after Hui Yuhao fell in love with 2 separatists, he didn't even want to seek revenge. Besides, joining the Tang sect doesn't bring any benefits. Speaking of the method of eye cultivation alone, he is not without it. After all, his senior was a disciple of Wudong Mountain. Zhang Sanfeng has developed many martial arts in his daily life, and he has long taught the Wudong sect's method of eye cultivation, Wudong Mingmu Gong, to Hui Yuhao. Moreover, Wudong Mingmu Gong can be practiced anytime, anywhere. It's not like someone's magic pupils and time and place restrictions. Moreover, despite the long cultivation time of Dragon Elephant Prajnaparamita skill, this thing is among the top in the original work. It doesn't require talent, and even if you practice hard, you can succeed. It's just that it's easy to learn but difficult to master. Just as Su Jie was pondering, a wooden sign on the roadside ahead caught the attention of the 2 people. 50 miles ahead, you will enter the starry forest. There are soul beasts lurking within the area, please be careful. Hui Yuhao's face showed a hint of joy as he turned to Su Jie and said, Brother Jie, here we are. Su Jie glanced at the wooden plaque and felt a bit worried. Yes, here we are, let's hurry up. He hoped that the key plot points of the original work could not be changed because of his little butterfly. Hui Yuhao let out a and their speed suddenly increased. Bei and Tanya, who were following behind the 2, suddenly froze and were surprised to find that they had lost the traces of Hui Yuhao and Su Jie. As the 2 of them advanced, the trees around them became increasingly dense, and even the air became cooler with the increase of trees. Su Jie and Hui Yuhao's faces became increasingly solemn. Becoming a soul master is the only way for Su Jie and Hui Yuhao. This is what they must do. In fact, Su Jie and Hui Yuhao need not be so anxious. After all, with the awakening of the Wulin, Su Jie found that the power that restricted the progress of the 9-yang manual had disappeared, so they can wait until Su Jie's the 9-yang manual is great, and then come out to hunt and kill the soul beast and absorb the soul ring. But there is a great opportunity for Hui Yuhao in this place. The only million-year soul beast on the Dolua continent is not afraid of 10,000, just in case. If missed, it would indeed be a huge loss, so Su Jie must take Hui Yuhao on a risk. As the 2 continued to move forward, Su Jie suddenly felt a hint of danger approaching. Turning his head, Hui Yuhao's face also showed a hint of vigilance, and a faint white appeared in his blue eyes, indicating that he had activated his martial soul. The 2 immediately stopped their steps, and Su Jie summoned his own martial soul, watching cautiously from back to back with Hui Yuhao. Suddenly, a black figure flashed by and jumped onto the open space in front of Hui Yuhao. Su Jie immediately turned around and saw the shape of the black figure clearly. That is a baboon about 1 meter high, with brown hair all over its body, brown eyes, and extremely long arms. Its sharp nails are aimed at Hui Yuhao and Su Jie, with a fierce light in its eyes, roaring loudly at them. Who? The baboon rushed forward in an instant, and Su Jie stepped forward and raised his hand, striking each other with his fist. He then retreated and dispersed. Su Jie felt the strength of the baboon in front of him and retreated behind Hu Yuhao, saying, "Yuhao, come on. This baboon's strength is not strong, otherwise it wouldn't have been killed by Hu Yuhao in the original work. As for now, the first layer of Hu Yuhao's Dragon Elephant Prajnaparamita skill has been completed, and with every move, there is still no problem playing as a wind baboon with decades of cultivation." Upon hearing this, Hu Yuhao didn't say much. He raised the white tiger dagger in his hand and walked forward alone. Seeing this, the baboon in front of him kicked back and attacked Hu Yuhao directly. Hu Yuhao swallowed his saliva, and a nervous heartbeat sounded in his ears. This was the first time in his life that Hu Yuhao had faced an attack from a soul beast. Although he had fought against Su Jie before, he was now facing a soul beast. The key, the key, the key. Hu Yuhao kept silently reciting in his heart, but he kept coming forward and colliding with the wind baboon. The white tiger dagger in his hand always had a distance to touch the wind baboon's body. Once again, in the moment when there was still a distance between the white tiger dagger in Hu Yuhao's hand and the neck of the baboon, the soul power in Hu Yuhao's body quickly surged up, directly surging onto the white tiger dagger in Hu Yuhao's hand. In an instant, the white tiger dagger in his hand released a white foot-long blade. Gulu, gulu. A volleyball-sized object rolled on the grass, adding a hint of bright red color to the blue-green-silver grass. Bang! The body in front of Hu Yuhao instantly fell to the ground, and a white soul ring slowly flowed out with the blood from the neck of the body. I killed it. Hu Yuhao paused for a moment, then looked at the soul ring, and a hint of joy appeared on his handsome little face. Soul rings are essential for advanced soul masters. Hu Yuhao glanced at the white soul ring and was not prepared to absorb it. The soul ring in front of him, not to mention its low age, had completely different attributes from Hu Yuhao's martial soul attributes. Hu Yuhao glanced at the body of the baboon, turned his head to look at Su Jie, and prepared to continue moving deeper with Su Jie. He knew that Su Jie's martial soul was the sun, and if he wanted to absorb it, he should also absorb soul rings with fire or light attributes. At first glance, the baboon in front of him was not a soul beast with fire attributes. Moreover, the lifespan is too low to be absorbed. The higher the lifespan of the soul beast, the stronger the soul ring produced by the soul master, and the stronger the soul skill produced after being absorbed. The white soul ring in front of us represents that this baboon has only 10 to 100 years of cultivation. When the soul beast reaches 100 years of cultivation, the produced soul ring will turn yellow, and when it reaches 1,000 years, it will turn purple, black for 10,000 years, and red for 100,000 years. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. The Big Maggot. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. The Big Maggot. Su Jie looked at the headless body of the baboon and felt a little puzzled. No, what about the big maggot? Suddenly, a voice arose in the minds of Su Jie and Hu Yuhao. At the same time, an invisible wave dispersed, and within 100 miles, except for Hu Yuhao and Su Jie, all living beings fell into silence. Finally, I met a human with spiritual attributes again, but unfortunately my talent is a bit too. Oh, what a peculiar soul. Hu Yuhao was startled. Su Jie was prepared, so he was not startled. However, at first, he was a bit puzzled as to why he could also hear the voice of Tianmeng Ice Silkworm. Then, when he heard what Tianmeng Ice Silkworm said behind him, he was also startled. Before Su Jie and Hu Yuhao could react, the ground beneath them began to shake, and a crack suddenly appeared on the ground ahead. The crack gradually grew larger with the vibration of the ground, turning into a large crack. A faint golden white light shot out from the crack in the ground. Hu Yuhao instinctively clenched the white tiger dagger in his hand, feeling extremely nervous. He turned to look at Su Jie and found that he had summoned his martial soul and placed it on his head, looking like a person whose head had turned into a fireball. Su Jie doesn't want to do this either. If possible, he actually wants to have the heavenly dream ice silkworm, a million-year soul ring. However, this thing is spiritual. If this thing enters the sea of spirit, it will easily replicate Su Jie's memory. Not to mention the plot in his mind, it is the embarrassing and self-deprecating things in the past 2 lifetimes that he couldn't let Tianmeng Ice Silkworm know. So he didn't want to be replicated by the Heavenly Dream Ice Silkworm. The method of using the martial soul to wrap his head was something that Su Jie and Hui Yuhao had been experimenting with for a long time. He asked Hui Yuhao to observe Su Jie's spirit with his spiritual eyes and found that when Su Jie wrapped his martial soul over his head, Hui Yuhao couldn't feel his spirit at all. So Su Jie is now putting his martial soul on his head to avoid the spiritual observation of the Heavenly Dream Ice Silkworm. Brother Jie, what's going on? Hui Yuhao swallowed his saliva, feeling a bit puzzled as he turned to look at Su Jie and was about to ask. A chill suddenly emanated from the crevice in front of me, and the temperature around me began to noticeably decrease. The crack in the ground suddenly widened, and the golden white light suddenly disappeared. A special figure jumped out. That was a round and rolling head, looking plump, with a diameter of over 1 meter, and the figure's body was over 7 meters long. With its appearance, the temperature of the surrounding environment suddenly dropped. Hui Yuhao unconsciously approached Su Jie, who summoned the martial soul. Hui Yuhao exhaled a breath of white air, which warmed up a bit. The insect in front of me is definitely a soul beast. It looks a bit like a maggot in the bathroom, but its head is a bit big. What nonsense maggot, brother, is an ice silkworm, it's a silkworm. Tianmeng Ice Silkworm seemed to feel what Hui Yuhao was thinking and said angrily. After speaking, she turned around and showed off the patterns on her body. The Heavenly Dream Ice Silkworm was all white jade in color, with a halo flowing under its skin. She had a pair of shining golden eyes on her head, and every half meter, there was a golden pattern around her body. From beginning to end, there were a total of 10 patterns. Looking at the magnificent soul beast in front of him, Hui Yuhao felt a bit embarrassed upon hearing this. It was indeed not very like maggots, but more like silkworms. However, this soul beast was so big, it should be at least a century-old soul beast, and it seemed to have spiritual attributes. If you kill it to make a soul ring, it should be about the same. Thinking of this, Hui Yuhao unconsciously clenched the white tiger dagger in his hand and looked at Tianmeng Ice Silkworm with longing. At this moment, Tianmeng Ice Silkworm looked at Hui Yuhao and understood his thoughts. With a surge of energy, she spoke up, "Good kid, you're quite brave, but it's okay. I was supposed to make a soul ring for you." Hui Yuhao was about to take action when he was suddenly suppressed by the spiritual power of Tianmeng Ice Silkworm, and his body could not move at all. Although Su Jie had a martial soul wrapped around his head, he could still feel the situation around him. Listening to what Tianmeng Ice Silkworm said, she secretly thought that a newborn calf is not afraid of tigers, and at this moment, she even thought of hunting Tianmeng Ice Silkworm. Hui Yuhao's body was completely immobile at this moment, and Su Jie, who was motionless beside him, couldn't help but feel scared. Tianmeng Ice Silkworm felt the emotional changes of Hui Yuhao and comforted him, saying, don't be afraid, brother won't hurt you." As she spoke, she let go of her mental suppression of Hui Yuhao. The suppression on Hui Yuhao's body was lifted, and he still raised his dagger towards Tianmeng Ice Silkworm. At this moment, Su Jie beside him could no longer pretend. His martial soul slowly rose from his head, revealing his eyes, and then remained motionless, still protecting Su Jie's brain in sea consciousness. Su Jie also put on a defensive posture. At this moment, Hui Yuhao saw Su Jie move and turned his head to give him a dry look. After seeing Hui Yuhao's gaze clearly, Su Jie's heart churned. "Good guy, big brother, you were just suppressed by it, and now you even want to hunt it." He quickly spoke up and said, "Yuhao, it has no malicious intent." After saying that, he gave Hui Yuhao an unbeatable look. Hui Yuhao felt relieved upon seeing this. "What are you doing?" Tianmeng Ice Silkworm ignored the small movements between the two and said, "First of all, let me introduce myself. I am the embodiment of hero and chivalry, the king of soul beasts with both wisdom and beauty, an unparalleled powerhouse. I have been practicing for millions of years and have created the record for the highest lifespan in Dolua continent. You can call me Tianmeng brother. Hui Yuhao was a bit confused when he heard this. A million years. How could it be? His heart was filled with disbelief. He heard that Su Jie had learned that the strongest soul beast in the Dolua continent takes only 100,000 years, so he turned to look at Su Jie. Upon seeing the situation, Su Jie could only shake his head, indicating that he was not very clear either. Otherwise, how can I say it? I know that the heavenly dream ice silkworm is a million-year-old soul beast, and it is also a very garbage million-year soul beast. However, garbage is against those 100,000-year-old soul beasts. For the heavenly dream ice silkworm, simple spiritual suppression can destroy the two. It's difficult for him to explain clearly. Once he exits, the big maggot will definitely be interested in him. His previous mother left him with those skills, but this reason has already been used once and it's not easy to use it again. And even if he uses this reason, this big maggot is not as innocent as Hui Yuhao, it will definitely not believe it. Tianmeng ice silkworm was not prepared to say much, because it found that its spiritual power was useless to Su Jie. Moreover, when Hui Yuhao stood next to Su Jie, it could not use its spiritual power to talk to Hui Yuhao. Although puzzled, at this moment it had no time to explore. Tianmeng ice silkworm turned its head to look deep in the starry forest, and the 10 golden rings on its body began to move rhythmically, transforming its strong spiritual power into substance and gently pushing Su Jie away. Transforming into a white shadow, it charged straight towards Hui Yuhao. For the heavenly dream ice silkworm, although the soul next to Hui Yuhao is peculiar, it is of no use to him, so it is completely out of its consideration. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. External plug combination. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 8 External plug combination. A golden white light suddenly appeared, although strong, not dazzling, appearing soft. Su Jie beside him looked at everything with interest, and suddenly a gray-black spot appeared. The light hovered around the white light, seemingly noticing Su Jie on the edge and moving towards him. Su Jie naturally also noticed the abrupt presence in the white light. Seeing the light spot attacking him, he was frightened and immediately lowered his martial soul, which wrapped around his head again. Are you joking? What is Alex? Today is Tang San's dog, and it's impossible for him to get into his head. The gray-black light spot felt Su Jie's movements and seemed to understand that the strange soul did not like him. It no longer hesitated and disappeared into the white light in an instant. The white light gradually dissipated, and Hui Yuhao, who was in the middle of the white light, also fainted as the white light dissipated. The invisible wave that caused the surrounding creatures to enter a state of stillness also began to gradually dissipate, perhaps to prevent any accidents that might occur if Hui Yuhao fainted. Just for a moment, Hui Yuhao, who was lying on the ground, gradually woke up. Su Jie saw that Hui Yuhao had already awakened, so he put away his martial soul and prepared to continue moving forward with Hui Yuhao. After all, he did not have a soul ring made of a large maggot with fire or light attributes. As soon as the martial soul was put away, the familiar voice suddenly appeared in Su Jie's mind, which frightened Su Jie and quickly summoned the martial soul to wrap around his head. Hello, I. The heavenly dream ice silkworm words in Hui Yuhao's mind were cut off instantly, and he couldn't help but become a bit impatient and frustrated. Su Jie didn't dare to relax at all. After all, the memories in his mind couldn't let this long worm know. As soon as Hui Yuhao woke up, he had an incredulous expression on his face and whispered to Su Jie about what had happened in his mind. The Tianmeng ice silkworm, which was already somewhat irritable in his mind, became even more infuriated and frustrated. But the heavenly dream ice silkworm did not stop Hui Yuhao. The heavenly dream ice silkworm learned from the replicated memory in Hui Yuhao's mind that the boy in front of him, who was the same age as Hui Yuhao, was the only reliance for him in the world. Moreover, when it first entered Hui Yuhao's mind, the boy with a peculiar soul was completely unaffected by his spiritual power and could see the entire process of its entry into Hui Yuhao's body. Su Jie didn't feel surprised when he heard what Hui Yuhao said. After all, the two grew up together. Although there was no blood relationship, in Hui Yuhao's heart, Su Jie was Hui Yuhao's only biological brother. This kid will tell him any secrets he has. Hey, this kid is really innocent. Su Jie finished listening and said, Yuhao, according to what the long worm said, it is already one with you, so it is unlikely to harm you. It is also beneficial for you to become stronger, so take it easy. In Hui Yuhao's mind, the heavenly dream ice silkworm had already fallen asleep because it had consumed too much when integrating with Hui Yuhao. Otherwise, when I heard Su Jie say he was a long worm, I had to control Hui Yuhao's body and fight him to the death. Su Jie had just finished speaking, and Hui Yuhao was about to say something more. A sudden exclamation of surprise rang out. Upon hearing this, Hui Yuhao immediately closed his mouth and looked towards the direction of the sound. A figure quickly rushed towards the position where Su Jie and Hui Yuhao were standing. Seeing that they were fine, they glanced at the body on the ground and patted their chest, saying to the two, "We arrived a bit late. Fortunately, you guys have nothing to do." Bebe walked towards the body of the baboon, examined it, and said, "The wound is so smooth, it should be injured by a sharp weapon." After finishing speaking, he looked at the white tiger dagger in Hui Yuhao's hand and said, "It should be caused by the dagger in Hui's hand. The dagger in Hui's hand should be a soul guide." Upon hearing this, Hui Yuhao nodded and injected his soul power into the dagger in his hand. The dagger instantly stretched out its long blade. This wind baboon only has decades of cultivation. "Brother Hua, you won't absorb his soul ring, will you?" Bebe frowned and said as he saw that there was no soul ring on the baboon's body. Before Hui Yuhao could speak, he was patted on the shoulder by Su Jie behind him. Hui Yuhao turned his head and saw Su Jie's gaze. He nodded and said, The soul ring has been absorbed by me." After speaking, summoning the martial soul, Hui Yuhao's eyes emitted a little white light, and a translucent white soul ring rose from the soles of Hui Yuhao's feet. At this moment, Bebe also saw clearly the martial soul of Hui Yuhao, the spiritual martial soul. Isn't that right? Isn't this baboon wind related? How did he absorb it? Are you a martial soul from the spiritual realm? Before Bebe could speak, Tanya beside him couldn't contain his doubts and said. Hui Yuhao nodded at the words and said, My martial soul is a spirit eye, mutated martial soul, and a spiritual one. Eyes. Mutated martial soul, how do you absorb wind-type soul rings? Bebe asked, seeing this, according to the soul master theory he learned, this is impossible. Hui Yuhao shook his head and explained that he and Su Jie were of low strength. As soon as they entered the Star Do forest, they were attacked by the wind baboon. By chance, they let him kill the wind baboon, and then Hui Yuhao absorbed its soul ring. Bebe clearly didn't believe Hui Yuhao's words and instinctively looked at Su Jie. Su Jie nodded and said, "Yes, what Hui Yuhao said is correct." After receiving a positive answer, Bebe obviously no longer doubted Hui Yuhao's words. This time, the wind baboon may have mutated into a spiritual attribute. After all, he had seen the martial souls of Su Jie and Hui Yuhao, and neither had a soul ring. Moreover, in a short period of time, with the strength of Hui Yuhao and Su Jie, they were unable to hunt the second soul beast, and there was no corpse of the second soul beast on sight. Tanya didn't have as much thought as Bebe. When she heard that Hui Yuhao's martial soul was a spiritual eye, she seemed to have thought of something and said happily, "The main martial soul." Good, good. At this moment, Bebe also reacted and said to the two, "Unfortunately, we came a bit late. We should have helped Hui brothers find better soul beasts." With a regretful expression on his face, he turned to Su Jie and said, "Su brothers haven't absorbed soul rings yet. Come with us." Upon hearing this, Tanya nodded and said, yes, you can come with us. Su Jie raised his hand to express gratitude and said, okay, thank you. Just call me Su Jie. He was worried about what to do with his soul ring. Now with the help of Soul Lord, it's not just about breaking through iron shoes without hiding places, getting it all effortlessly. Hui Yuhao also took the opportunity and said, just call me Yuhao. Bebe nodded at the words and said, I understand, I understand. Su Jie's martial soul is of fire attribute, right? Su Jidao said, yes, it's a fire attribute, and the martial soul is the sun. He summoned the martial soul and a hot fireball appeared in Su Jidao's hand. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. The first step to becoming a mage. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. The first step to becoming a mage. Okay, we are looking for a 100-year-old fire attribute soul beast for you, Bebe said, seemingly afraid of Hui Yuhao's loss, and comforted him, Yuhao, don't worry too much. Although your first soul ring is only 10 years old, there have been times in history where the first soul ring is 10 years old, and even the second soul ring is a 10-year title Doluo. Tanya also comforted and said, yes, yes, you don't have to worry too much. Upon hearing this, Hui Yuhao just nodded and didn't say much. Bebe and Tanya saw that he didn't speak, so they thought he was a bit disappointed. Su Jie stood aside, watching the two of them constantly comforting Hui Yuhao, feeling somewhat speechless. If these two people knew that Hui Yuhao's first soul ring was 1,000,000-year-old, what expression would it be? After adding two more people, Su Jie and Hui Yuhao's speed actually increased. Bebe and Tanya knew the approximate distribution of soul beasts on the outskirts of the Star Do forest. Knowing that it was difficult to find the soul beast Tanya needed, he first prepared to help Su Jie hunt for a soul ring. In just a moment, the group found a fireball mouse with a cultivation of 400 years, which was determined by the red circle behind the fireball mouse. For every 100 years of cultivation, fireball mouse will grow a red circle behind its back. The one they found has exactly 4 red circles on its back, one of which is slightly smaller than the others. This indicates that this fireball mouse has only recently reached 400 years old. Bebe immediately summoned the blue electric Tyrannosaurus Rex soul, and the yellow, and purple soul rings rose. Bebe stepped forward and grabbed the fireball mouse while eating, emitting lightning in his arm and immediately electrocuted the fireball mouse. He threw it in front of Su Jie, who didn't say anything and took the white tiger dagger from Hui Yuhao's hand. Directly stabbed the fireball rat's intended harm. A yellow soul ring rose, and Su Jie mobilized his soul power to pull it over. He sat on the ground and rested. Hui Yuhao became interested and carefully observed Su Jie's absorption of soul rings. The soul ring rhythmically moved without any surprises throughout, and Su Jie's absorption of the soul ring went smoothly. This soul ring gave Su Jie a soul skill. Fireball technique. After Su Jie absorbed the soul ring, the four of them continued to advance towards the depths of the starry forest. The two learned from their conversation that Bebe and Tanya came to the Star Do forest this time for Tanya's third soul ring. Hui Yuhao then realized that although the two of them were only 2 or 3 years older than him, they were already soul masters at level 30, especially Bebe's soul power was at least level 31. Thinking of this, his face couldn't help but show envy towards the two of them. Tanya saw the expression on Hui Yuhao's face and said, "Younger brother Yuhao, younger brother Su Jie, what are your plans for the next?" Hui Yuhao didn't speak, but looked at Su Jie. Almost all the decisions along the way were made by Su Jie. Although Su Jie told him that they would register for Shrek College next, he still chose to let Su Jie tell them their next plans. "We are preparing to register at Shrek College," Su Jie said. Bebe was surprised when he heard this and said, "You are already 12 years old. Don't you know that there are restrictions on enrollment at Shrek Academy? You need to be no more than 12 years old. Soul power should not be lower than level 15. Su Jie smiled and said, "I know. After speaking, he released his martial soul and displayed his soul power level. You actually absorbed a soul ring and reached level 16. Tanya beside her felt Su Jie's soul power level and couldn't help but open her mouth, unable to set up a channel. Beibei was not as surprised as Tanya and reminded him, Teacher Xiaoya, don't forget that even if a soul master doesn't absorb soul rings, they can continue to practice. That's right, little brother Yuhao, what about you? Tanya just realized and looked at Hui Yuhao on the side. Hui Yuhao felt a bit embarrassed when he heard this and said, I'm only at level 11. Ah, that's great. Tanya clapped her hands and said happily. She immediately reacted, feeling that her behavior was somewhat inappropriate, and quickly spoke up to explain. Yuhao, I didn't mean that. Beibei patted her head and said helplessly, what she meant was that you can join our sect. Our sect has a special invitation spot for Shrek. Hui Yuhao was somewhat puzzled upon hearing this and said, sect. Tanya immediately took over the conversation and said, have you ever heard of Tangmen? Tangmen is the first sect on the mainland. Tangmen. Hui Yuhao recalled for a moment. He remembered that Su Jie seemed to have told him about this sect, and there was a lot of disdain in his words. He didn't expect it to be the first sect on the mainland. Yuhao, have you heard of Tangmen? Beibei asked as he saw Hui Yuhao pondering. I've heard from Brother Jie, Hui Yuhao answered truthfully. Tanya immediately turned the conversation around and said, Brother Jie, you actually know Tangmen. What do you think of Tangmen? Su Jie looked at Tanya with a sense of helplessness, I know a little bit. Tangmen was founded thousands of years ago and is one of the oldest sects in history. The first sect leader, Tang San, defeated the evil martial soul hall and changed the pattern of the mainland with his own strength, laying the foundation for the future development of mainland soul masters. Although it has declined now, I believe that with your joining, Tangmen will definitely create another brilliant future, Tanya explained in one breath. After listening to Tanya's introduction, Hui Yuhao couldn't help but feel a bit surprised. This is completely different from what Brother Jie said. Su Jie said that the reason why Tang San had a battle with the martial soul hall that wanted to unify the mainland at that time was purely because Tang San needed continuous struggles between countries on the mainland, so his secret UN equipment, to sell for a good price. It has nothing to do with whether the martial soul hall is evil or not. What else lays the foundation for the future development of soul masters? Su Jie said, that's pure farting. Winning a war is laying the foundation for the future of soul masters. The future of the soul master has nothing to do with Tang San, a hidden weapon dealer. Of course, Su Jie still gave Tang San some face, and he didn't express some thoughts. For example, Su Jie believes that Tang San did indeed establish a part of the future of soul masters, but it was the future of evil soul masters, and he laid a very good foundation for it. But has the Tang clan already declined? He knows how the first sect on a continent would take a liking to these two dilapidated households. Thinking of this, Hui Yuhao's interest in Tangmen completely disappeared. Tanya looked at Su Jie and Hui Yuhao, whose expressions remained unchanged, and was somewhat surprised. Aren't you interested? Su Jie nodded, indicating that he really didn't have much interest. He never wanted Hui Yuhao to join the Tangmen. His original intention has always been to keep Hui Yuhao away from the pervert who split his daughter in half. When he enters Shrek College in the future, if Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong are separated again, he will definitely let Hui Yuhao change his dormitory. Isn't it just the fusion of martial souls that accelerates cultivation speed? Is that important? Moreover, Su Jie really couldn't imagine how two completely incompatible people could merge their martial souls. It's still a perfect fusion of martial souls, it's really inexplicable. Su Jie suspected that the suspect Tang split his daughter in half in order to carve Tang Wudong into the shape of Hui Yuhao. Thinking of this, Su Jie couldn't help but feel a chill. It wasn't something sick, it was something. A normal person would divide their daughter in half and then shape it into someone else's shape. Upon seeing this, Beibei also felt a bit strange, but still said to Su Jie, "You really don't think about it, after all, a unique skill in the Tang sect is really suitable for little brother Yu Hao." Beibei has already seen that the backbone of these two people is Su Jie. If Su Jie doesn't join the Tang men, then Hui Yu Hao is unlikely to join either. Su Jie shook his head and refused. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Mandala Snake. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 10. Mandala Snake. The following journey was somewhat silent, and Tanya was in a bad mood because the two of them did not join the Tang sect. Xiaoya, be careful. Beibei's face suddenly changed and she rushed towards Tanya, hugging her tightly. Seeing this, Tanya showed off her hand and threw a hidden weapon, hitting a black shadow in the air. Beibei then rushed to the side while holding her. The black shadow fell to the ground, making a sound of cc and exhaling a sweet and fishy breath to attack Hui Yu Hao. Hui Yu Hao was still a bit stunned, but Su Jie had already reacted and rushed to Hui Yu Hao. The martial soul in his hand suddenly appeared, and a yellow soul ring rose from Su Jie's feet. Su Jie did not use soul skills, and his hand, which was only the size of a volleyball, quickly grew larger, transforming into a human and blocking Su Jie in front of him. Zzz. The poisonous gas emitted by the black shadow was constantly purified by Su Jie's martial soul. In this way, some of the poison gas passed over the spirit of Wu and was inhaled by Su Jie. Su Jie's brain became dizzy, his face began to appear green, and the spirit of Wu returned to his body automatically. Su Jie hurriedly started running the 9-yang manual. Hui Yu Hao saw Su Jie's martial soul return to his body and quickly took out the white tiger dagger to block Su Jie in front of him, saying, "Brother Jie, are you okay?" Su Jie did not immediately respond. The 9-yang soul power in his body rapidly ran, and the green color on his face gradually faded. He summoned the martial soul again and replied, "It's okay." At this moment, Beibei had already sent Tanya aside. Seeing that Su Jie and the others were fine, they summoned their martial soul and charged straight towards the black shadow. They then realized that the black shadow was a 3-meter-long, peach-red snake with a small protrusion on its forehead, shaped like a flower. "Wow, Mandala Snake, Millennium level, Beibei, that's what I want." Tanya also shouted beside him at this moment. After speaking, he summoned a blue long vine and 2 yellow soul rings rose from his feet. As Beibei approached, his first soul ring lit up, and a dragon claw formed by a blue-purple lightning that was about the size of a basketball, under Beibei's control, padded towards the Mandala Snake. Thunder Dragon Claw, Beibei's first soul skill. Tanya also controlled his martial soul to attack the Mandala Snake. The Mandala Snake's tail trembled and jumped up from the ground, jumping out from the gap between the two attacks. At this moment, a huge fireball exploded towards the Mandala Snake. Bang! An explosion sounded, and the Mandala Snake in the air had nowhere to rely and could not dodge. It was directly hit by a fireball and flew out in the air. "Well done!" Beibei shouted when he saw the Mandala Snake being blown out. Then, the second soul ring lit up, and several blue currents shot out from Beibei's right dragon claw, weaving into a grid and trapping the Mandala Snake in the air. This is Beibei's second soul skill, the power grid transformed by the thunderous force. "Xiaoya," Beibei shouted from behind as he saw the Mandala Snake trapped in the power grid. Upon hearing this, Tanya took a peculiar step and instantly approached the netted Mandala Snake. A flying knife pierced the Mandala Snake's eye socket, ending its life. A purple soul ring slowly rose from the corpse of the Mandala Snake. Tanya didn't rush to absorb the soul ring, but first said to Beibei, "Help me protect the Dharma." Then he turned to Su Jie and said, "Hehe, my steps are amazing. If you want to learn, join Tang Men and I will teach you." Then he pulled the soul ring and sat down to absorb it. Beibei stood next to Tanya, did not retract his martial soul, and showed the purple extreme magic eyes to the two of them. Then the two of them said, the unique skills of the Tang clan are really amazing, especially the purple extreme magic eyes, which are very suitable for young brothers Yu Hao. Su Jie nodded, without saying much, and looked at Tang Ye's absorption of soul rings. Joking, what is Ghost Shadow Mist? Have you heard of it before in Wudong's Ladder Cloud Zone? When you reach your ultimate level, step on your left foot and directly ascend to the sky. Can Ghost Shadow Mist have this effect? Even if we don't mention the Ladder Cloud Leap, we can only talk about the Gecko Wall walking skill that comes with his The Nine Yang Manual. Can he become a Spider-Man when he is trained, and can he be a ghost? A lightness skill with some illusion effects can rival his two martial arts. Hui Yuhao, on the other hand, had a slight interest in the purple extreme demon eyes, but only a little, because Su Jie had already taught him the Wudong Bright Eyes technique, which had a very good effect. Jie Gu once said, chewing too much is not enough. Bei saw that the two were silent and asked, by the way, I just saw that Su Jie and Yu Hao both used soul techniques. Su Jie's fireball technique is so powerful that it is very likely to be the ultimate martial soul. What is Yu Hao's soul technique? Speaking of this, Bei couldn't help but feel regretful in his heart. It's really a pity that one seems to be the ultimate martial soul, and the other is extremely suitable for purple extreme demon eyes not to join the Tang clan. Su Jie spoke up and said, it's possible. He was actually not quite sure. His son martial soul should not be a pure ultimate martial soul, but he hasn't studied it thoroughly, so he's not quite sure. Hui Yuhao directly released his soul technique to let Bei feel it. Anyway, there is no need to hide what he will definitely know in the future. Bei saw the soul ring rising from Hui Yuhao's feet, and his body suddenly shook. As he gazed, the flow of time slowed down, and information about the surrounding environment within 100 meters appeared in Bei's mind. Leaves, insects, and even the wind were all outlined in Bei's mind. How could a 10-that-year soul ring have such an effect? Bei was extremely shocked in his heart. Is his mental mutation attribute so strong? Bei couldn't help but say, aren't you really joining the Tang men? Hui Yuhao and Su Jie shook their heads again, and Hui Yuhao immediately withdrew his soul technique, due to the Dragon Elephant Prajnaparamita technique and Wudong Bright Eyes technique. His body and eyes are much stronger than the original work. The range of spiritual detection and sharing has reached about 100 meters in diameter, and he can also share his detection ability with 8 targets. Ha! Tang Yechang took a deep breath and slowly opened his eyes. His entire spirit had improved significantly, and then he jumped up from the ground. 2 yellow and 1 purple soul rings also appeared, and that purple soul ring looked much more noble than the other 2 yellow soul rings. Because Su Jie, Hui Yuhao, Bei, and Tang Ye both went to Shrek College, they decided to travel together as a group of 4. In the first 2 days, Tang Ye would still pester Su Jie and the two of them to join the Tang sect. However, she found that Hui Yuhao's method of refining his eyes was no weaker than that of the purple extreme demon eyes, and he did not even have any restrictions on the environment. He was also unclear about their origins. When asked about them, he was fooled by Su Jie's vague words, so Tang Ye believed that the two of them should have their own sect. Then, let's not mention the matter of getting started. While Tang Ye and his companions were practicing the purple extreme demon eye, Su Jie went up to inquire about the cultivation conditions of the purple extreme demon eye. The two of them did not hide any secrets and directly revealed the conditions for their own cultivation of the purple extreme demon eye. Half a day after the two of them stated their conditions, Su Jie used his martial soul to simulate the purple energy produced by the rising sun. Through the experiment of the 3 of them, he found that it had an effect on their cultivation of the purple extreme magic eyes. After Su Jie let the two of them go for free 3 times, they started charging fees. Tang Ye couldn't help but feel a little angry when he saw Su Jie charging fees. After all, she didn't have money, and Bei didn't say much. He directly gave him 100 soul coins to help him and Tang Ye book a few times. He knew that the registration fee for Shrek Academy was quite high, and the two of them looked really short of money. Moreover, in his opinion, the magical effect of Su Jie's martial soul may not be worth a penny to others, but for the Tang clan, the price of 10 gold soul coins at a time is already extremely favorable. For Tang clan personnel, the enhancement of the purple extreme magic eyes brings a comprehensive improvement, especially the application of hidden weapon techniques. Tanya and Bebe saw the magic of their martial souls and couldn't help but invite each other again, but were inevitably rejected by the two. End of this chapter.